welcome into another episode of the Online Church Blueprint. I am Andy, one of your hosts here, and I'm going to be joined by Mark Lutz in just a few minutes. And man, we have made it all the way to episode 13. So thanks everybody for sticking with us and kind of joining in on the conversation. We've actually had a really cool amount of feedback from all of you. So you can continue to give that feedback either in comments below. You can DM us, DM myself or Mark or Altar Live or Digital Church Network in any of the things that you find in the show notes. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear some of the things that you would actually like us to be talking about as well. We have kind of a list of things that we always kind of want to bring to the table, but oftentimes we miss or we can miss exactly what it is you want to hear. So feel free to drop us a line, as they used to say back in the maybe 20s or 30s or 50s. I don't know. I'm not that old. But hey, in this episode today, Mark and I are actually going to be talking about how to bring things past just your Sunday mornings. And when I say Sunday mornings, I mean your events-based service planning. A lot of times people think of church as, just that thing you do on Sunday for an hour, and then they miss the rest of the week. And digital church, and really what we are able to do in online spaces, is take things past just the 1 hour in a physical and sometimes even in a streaming sense. So it's a fun episode. We get a chance to stretch our legs a little bit in terms of event planning and how to think differently about really how to gather your community, not necessarily with community tips, but how to gather your community. One of the best ways you can do that is through Altar Live, by the way. Not only does it give you live streaming kind of capabilities, but it also gives you this gigantic ability to gather your people throughout the week. You have your live streaming platform that you can stream directly into and then multi-stream out to other places. You have your rows that you can turn your cameras on and talk to people while things are happening. You have your lobbies, which kind of happens before or after the fact. And then throughout the week, if you want to gather your people, you have this gigantic meeting space that you can just open rooms that essentially takes the place of something like Zoom. And it's all for one price. You don't need a million different Zoom subscriptions anymore. You just need one subscription to Altar Live. You can sign up for a 14-day free trial in the link below, or go to altarlive.com and set up a meeting. It's a great platform. It's something that Digital Church Network has been using for quite a while, and we are really, really happy to be partnering with Altar Live. So all of that out of the way, sit back and enjoy episode 13 of the Online Church Blueprint. All right, here we go. I'm gonna intro. I got a question of the day, and then we'll get after it. So let's go
do it.
In 5, 4, 3. I got my counting right this time. I don't know if you remember the last episode, but I was in the studio. I was in the Bay Hope studio, not my home studio, and I counted. I went 5, 4, 3, 1, 1. And then you proceeded to flash me a series of gang signs there, Mark Lutz, of Lux Digital Church. And that was fun. I captured that on the internet, so...
Were you a kid in the era when people could bend their knuckles to spell the word blood?
My brother can still do that, on command. He's a 35-year-old man, and he can still do that on command.
He can throw up blood with his fingers.
Yeah, and that was the cool thing to do. Were you ever able to do it?
No, my friend Joe could do that, and he could tie a cherry stem together with his tongue, and I didn't have any of those talents. You didn't know that?
That cherry one is a little bit of a weird one. I feel awkward inside talking about that one.
Well, he was working at a bar at the time, so it just kind of it all fit really well.
Is that how he picked up the ladies?
I think. I don't know. It was it was hey girl, you want this milkshake? Let me see that cherry stem.
Yeah.
And then he was like, see what I did there? Yeah. Maybe it was. It's going to get more awkward the longer I talk about it.
Yep.
But I've been thinking about my friend because I hung out with him in person over the weekend, and we played Dungeons & Dragons. So a quick story, I'm a D&D player, and I decided over the weekend that I was going to cut a hole in my table with a sawzall, with a circular saw, and then I was going to put a TV in the table, right? So I was going to put a TV in the table, so the bottom of the TV would stick out the bottom, and I would hook up my computer to it, and I could put maps and cool stuff on it. So I did that. I took a circular saw, I drew out a hole, I cut a hole in the table, sloppily, mind you, but there was a hole in the table, and I put some 2x4s like on the edges to catch the edges of the TV. Right? So then I set the TV in it, and I couldn't get it to turn on because it didn't have a remote. So I picked up one edge of the TV, and it fell through the hole and smashed on the ground and was destroyed. So now I then had just a TV that was broken and a table with a hole in it, which isn't much of a table, as it turns more of a toilet than a table, really.
Huh.
Yeah.
Welcome to Jackass. I'm your host, Johnny Knoxville.
yeah. It didn't go well. To be fair, my wife said, "Mark, do not do this." And I went and got my saw. So, in the end of the day, listen to your wife. I then also slipped with the drill and jammed it into my thumb while it was running.
Oh.
So my thumb has kind of like a hole in the knuckle, and it's infected now. So that's also. So happy Memorial Day weekend to me.
Yeah, how's that going for you? Are you leaching out the poison in your thumb now, the infection?
I figure if I wrap a Band-Aid on it and don't look at it long enough, either my joint will just lock in place forever, or it will heal. I'm really rolling the dice with it. I'm just gonna, flipping the coin.
Rigor mortis. That's what that is.
Yep, we'll just see what happens.
That's awesome. Hey, welcome to the Online Church Blueprint, your home for all things medical condition related. We are not doctors. However, we play them on TV quite often. I'm Andy. That's Mark over there. And before we get going today, I've been asking. So I'm in like one of those marathon weeks where I'm recording. I think I've recorded 2 podcasts already. I've got 3 today. And then we've got like a large in-person meeting tomorrow. All about that content, baby. All about that internet stuff.
You got to bake it. Bake it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is how we make the money. You know, this is how we make all them free dollars that we make. The question I've been asking everybody on all these podcasts, and I'm going to extend to you, Mr. Mark, is what is the oldest person thing that you do?
Oh, the oldest person thing that I do.
Yeah.
Oh, dang, that's a really good
question. I can go first if you want.
Sure. Yeah, you go first. I'm sure yours is like really old anyway. Like,
well, thanks, Dad.
Very old. Yeah.
There's 2 of them that I do. Number 1, I am a big fan of like a hot porridge cereal, like a I can't do oatmeal because it like does weird things and like I need gluten-free oatmeal, but like I eat grits in the morning. I like just hot grits. Usually I'll mix in either eggs or like protein. So I'll have like a sweet or a savory, just depending on what I want. So that's like an old person thing. Like I know a lot of like younger people just, I don't eat breakfast. Like I went through that trend. That's fine. But the other one that I do is that every time I like sit down in a chair or I get up from a chair now, I go,
you go the sharp intake and the long exhale.
Yeah, it's like if I'm getting up from the chair, it's like that. I'm 39, by the way, so I'm not super old.
Well,
shut up. Yeah. You'll get there soon.
Okay, so I feel like I honestly feel like I don't do a lot of old people things, right? Like I still wear skinny jeans and t-shirts every day.
True.
And things because I married a woman who is just 80 in a 37-year-old's body. Because like my wife has she loves watching Jeopardy and QVC and she owns house shoes.
Wait, what?
House shoes for the house. Yeah, to be fair, she has a foot problem, so like there is like the doctor said that she should get it, but I just keep making fun of her because she has like house shoes now.
So they're not slippers.
No, they're shoes for inside the house. House shoes.
So she's got like a pair of Nikes just for inside.
Well, I think they're Croc flip-flops, I think is what they are. Just a little added support around the house. But I will say this, if there was something that either was kind of like old man, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm just kind of becoming a curmudgeon. Just like in all of the, like not in any way specifically, I'm just like I find myself more easily irritated, right? And I'm just sort of like curmudgeon-y, just like, man, them kids and their skateboards on the sidewalks, get them, I just find myself, depending on my mood, I'm just kind of crotchety and curmudgeon-y. It's not like, hey, I do this activity that makes me look like I don't eat dinner at 2 p.m. or anything like that yet. I think that I dress, probably inappropriately too young for my age, that sort of thing, right? But I'm just like my general attitude towards the next generations, even though I'm trying to reach them with Lux, is just curmudgeon-y, right? Like I don't want to learn your words and your Yin's kids aren't going nowhere with your life, that type of thing. I feel like I fall victim to.
I can see that. I can also, maybe that's the whole drinking coffee before an 8 o'clock church service and then staying up till 1 o'clock. Maybe that has something to do with the curmudgeon aspect as well.
Yeah, that more rests in the more rests in the lower back for me than anything else. That's where it is right now. It's not really the mental game that's getting me there.
Oh, okay. Let's reset, because that's you about broke me there, pal. Appreciate it. The Online Church Blueprint. Not only do we give unqualified medical advice, but we also turn you into an old person.
Yes.
So today we're in episode 13. I don't know how we've made it 13 episodes in this craziness, but we have been kind of lately in a series talking about community, talking about how to get your community engaged and for your online church, and also kind of for your physical church as well. And one of the things that kind of struck me as I was going through and editing the last episode was that we a lot of times talk about service-based churches. We talk about, the big tent poles of church. We talk about church services. We talk about small groups. We talk about, these events, these things that are happening. And I think I wanted us to have a kind of a conversation today about some of the things that we can do to extend past the Sunday morning, or in Lux's case, past the Wednesday evening, past the traditional church service. How can we extend our church into the other, what's the old Carrie Newhoff thing, 167 other hours out of the week? We have 168 hours. We do church for 1-ish hour a week. How do we extend everything into the 167? And so, Mark, I guess first things first, like when we talk about Lux, I know Lux is, based primarily in Discord, and there's a Discord happening 24/7. And so that's a perfect way. We've talked about that before. But like, what are some of the other thought processes that you and the team have when extending the church outwards just a little bit from a Wednesday evening service?
Yeah, I think I'd love to even take this back one step and just start with, like, this has to do, it has almost more to do with mindset than it does what you actually practically do. I think most people, especially church planters, sort of understand that hey, I work here to make sure that Sunday morning happens is not really a mentality that actually works when it comes to church, right? Like most churches that you see that are being led by someone who's like, hey, my job is to make sure that, Sunday morning happens. Like very frequently those churches don't thrive, right? So you see, I think I'm in the church planning circle, right? So I understand it there, but I think also just in growing or healthy churches in general, right? We sort of understand as pastors and as staff members that I'm not hired to do a task, right? Like there's a certain amount of like adopting the vision in the heart of the church that needs to be implemented. There's a certain amount of like, I live my life with these people. And, the church becomes my family. Like this is the way that Jesus described the church, right? This is the way we see the first church being described, as a family, right? That these people lived their life together. And I think most people who have sort of a drive to see the resurrection or the restoration of, first century church sort of movement type things happening in their congregation, that type of revival, like they understand that, right? So they're kind of all in. When it comes to digital space, I think it's just very easy. I think because it's online, it's a little detached, right? To just kind of get in this mentality that kind of like our job with the online space is just to kind of provide the service, right? Like it begins and ends kind of with the live stream. And I think that's a mentality that's held even by physical church pastors who really do truly embrace the like living my life with my church family, like the all-in mentality that's required to see a church actually thrive and grow, right? There's this certain level in which it's just all and entirely consuming, right? Church planners will describe their church as kind of like another child that they're raising. And I think that that's the mindset shift that needs to happen for you to really engage in digital ministry well. Like the question is not, how do I get more activities for people to do? The question is, what needs to happen for me to live my life with these people who are part of my church and digital space.
So what's the delineation between having like a Facebook group, like a typical church, typical brick and mortar church that says they have a digital presence? They'll have like a Facebook group and they're conversing with their people there, doing that versus, living a little bit more intentionally in Discord and then kind of doing things with their community, like a video game church, a gamer church, living on Twitch and living on Discord. Like, what's the difference there in your head?
I'm not. It would have something. I don't know. I'm thinking less of like a church that has a live stream and then also has an active Facebook presence, right?
Okay.
In Facebook groups, and I'm thinking more of like, what I think is more typical inside of the church right now, which is a church that has a live stream, and most of the staff is unaware of what has ever happened on the church's Facebook, right?
Yep.
They have a person who does Facebook and maybe a volunteer, and that's about it, right? And for the most part, like the church as a whole, staff pastors, the really only thought about digital space begins and ends with getting that live stream up and online. It doesn't really ask the question, like, how do we actually engage with outside of our church service and build relationships with people here? Because I think if you ask that question, there's actually some relatively logical conclusions that you would come to, right? I think that, I think of like a church near us that I know they do pastries with the pastor, right? Now, pastries with the pastor is not my favorite name. I love pastries. It sounds like, as a man, I don't want to go to that, right?
Nope.
That's why at Lux we do poker with the pastor occasionally.
Right.
Can you do pastries with the pastor with your online group? Yeah, you probably could, right? Like if you have 10 or 15 people that have been pretty active in your online and you want to invite them in to like, hey, maybe you don't actually provide them with pastries, right? But maybe you rename it and do something a little different where you have a chance to just, meet and greet with them, right? Like, what does it look like for you to do, a starting point, right? What there's a lot of churches have. How do you do that online once a month and very specifically invite people to it, right? And so I think there's ways to look and say, what are the things that your church already does, and how do we see those things actually existing in digital space in a way that engages with people in a healthy way? And so, for us at Lux, it's kind of community night in many ways. It's Bible studies and small groups and all that stuff. But community night we do once a month where we just kind of get together and play games. We'll play board games on a tabletop simulator, or we'll play a video game together, something in Discord activities, something like that. And it's kind of like our church potluck, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a little bit, it's not as good, it's not as tasty as the church potluck, right? Like, I'm never going to be one who's gonna say anything negative about a church potluck. I think those things are just absolutely holy.
Preach.
Yeah, and I wish that we could do them, right? But that's kind of our equivalent, right? We get together for game night, and it gives us another opportunity to sort of engage with throughout the week and connect with people. And so, I mean, that's an event, right? An activity. I don't know what you guys do at Bay Hope, though, to engage with, you guys got a lot of people watching you online. So what do you guys do to sort of engage with those people outside of just normal church?
Yeah, I mean, we have seasons, peaks and valleys, just like Lux does. And it's interesting that you the reason, let me back up. The reason that I brought up the Facebook thing was because we are primarily older than Lux. We're not super old at Bay Hope. Average age is about 35, 36, couple of kids, suburban. That's kind of our age demo. And our digital presence is a little bit older than that. I think our average is 37 or 38 years old. Again, a couple of kids, and scattered all throughout the United States and honestly on into the Philippines and a couple of other different places, which is pretty cool. But trying to keep all of them connected is rough, and so we do have a Facebook page, and it's a fairly thriving Facebook page. There's 700 or 800 people on this Facebook page, and there's active things happening there. We also have a Discord server that is not as active as I'd like it to be, and again, we're just kind of missing the demo there. I've been trying to force a round peg or a square peg into a round hole. I think that's whatever. I've been forcing the wrong size peg into the wrong size hole, and we're going to have some difficult conversations in the future about what we do with that. And part of the reason is that I love the idea of Discord. I love the idea of living with people 24/7, and it's just not always catching hold with a group that's not there. And so I guess the part of the humility factor for me is, as a leader, do we just say, hey, we tried this thing for 6 months and like we're putting resources and money and time into this and it's not working? So setting that aside, when we are living with a digital church, we every month, it's my remit as I've kind of strategized and put forward. We're going to hold community nights, and they're going to be much like what we do with Lux in terms of community nights. We're going to hold game nights. And, once a month we're going to do a game night, or once a month we're going to do just a community Q&A. We fire up Instagram and we fire up a live stream, and then me and, Austin, the digital coordinator, will just get online and we'll just hang out with the community and fire up a live stream and ask us anything type thing. We'll do trivia nights. We did during Christmas, we did movie nights. I mean, it was just, we do that type of stuff. It's a little events-based because the physical church is more in tune with events-based programming. They're used to showing up on a Wednesday night for a class, or used to showing up on a Thursday night for a small group. And so if you say, hey, once a month on a Tuesday night, we're going to do whatever, we'll get people to show up. The big thing there, though, is when we think about going beyond a Sunday, I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years, trying to get people to think beyond the Sunday. And I tell you what, man, laying against that brick wall of the institutional church thought of church only happens on a Sunday, that's a tough thing, man. And in some ways, Lux is a breath of fresh air for that exact reason. And we saw that last night, actually. Last night's service was one of the coolest, one of the most poppin' services that Lux has had in a while. A bunch of people in chat. There was kind of some stuff going on in the chat as well.
Yes, there was.
Honestly, that's part of it, though. You don't get that back and forth in a normal church, and you get that in the grumbling and the car ride home. You don't get to actually interact with other members. But the interesting thing was that there was a lot of people that were showing up on a Wednesday night that were then able to go into Discord after service and hang out. We had, 25 people hanging out in Discord afterwards?
Yeah, just kind of, we open up the server and just say, hey, like you would in the narthex or the fellowship hall after church on a Sunday morning, right? We get done with church and people just sort of linger and chat and catch up, and they might talk to their small group leader, they might go out to the parking lot and talk by their car. It's like, okay, well, how do we digitally open up the parking lot to stand by your car and talk?
Right.
And for us, that became opening up our Discord server and creating a whole bunch of voice chat rooms that are only available and visible right after church once a week. So people can just jump into them. We hide them all week long, like they're not there. You can't get into them. But after service on a Wednesday night, you can go there and just hop in and just talk to people if you want to.
Right, and about a third of the people that were in service actually jumped over into Discord afterwards, which is awesome. Like that's if you get a third of the people that if you have 300 people at your church service and you get 100 of them hanging out in your narthex afterwards, it's going to feel jammed. And
yes.
There's a lot of churches that are wishing for that. But that's what I'm saying. It's thinking beyond that service events based thing. If we just opened those rooms and said, hey guys, we're going to open a time for everybody and we're only going to give you 2 hours to come gather here, I would venture to say that there would be more, about the same amount of people on a random Friday afternoon or Friday evening that would gather in there. You might disagree with that, but just knowing the population of the digital presence that Lux has, I think we would see that connection happening. So I don't know. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit because I'm trying to get to the point of doing things beyond just your events-based programming, your Sunday morning or your Wednesday evening or things like that. It's key to actually growing your community. I guess the next question I would have for you is, can you give me a story or something that you have seen where somebody has actually grown through reaching beyond that service programming?
Oh, well, I'll give you two, and I'm going to give you one here and one from a while ago. So, for us, it was one of the things that we do pretty often now, probably 3 or 4 times a month, is that there is a group playing Dungeons and Dragons at our church and our server. And I have, I literally talked to a guy not that long ago, who's now one of our dungeon masters, and he said, it's funny, it was the church who drove me out because of Dungeons and Dragons, and it's now because of Dungeons and Dragons that I'm back at church. And I thought that was a really powerful thing, right? But this is just another thing, right? It's sort of event driven, right? You have to schedule a time that people can get on and you can all play together. But I would say this, I'm actually going to backtrack the entire way to my previous job. Before Lux, we hit the pandemic and I was working for a church and I had just finished a little studio for recording podcasts in my basement. I bought this microphone that I'm on right now, an SM7B, and a half decent interface. And I was doing some recording for video game podcasts. And I told my church, and I was the director of pastoral care and discipleship, and we canceled all small groups and we canceled all church services, and I literally had no idea what to do. I couldn't go to hospitals to visit people. I wasn't allowed to go near people, all of those sorts of things. It's like, how am I going to do pastoral care and not be able to go to the hospital during a pandemic? Like, what the heck am I supposed to do? And so I went to my board and I said, what if I got on our Facebook page and hit go live streamed for an hour 3 times a week? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I will stream from like 9 till 10 a.m. And all I will do is get on to ask our church family what they would like prayer for, and I will pray for them. And that little interaction was enormous during that season. And what's interesting is the people who showed up at our church are not digital natives. Like the people who are in my stream every single time we went live, they're not digital natives, right? They did come to church. They were just Facebook users who were part of our Facebook group at our church. And man, they just loved it. They came, we did Bible study together, we prayed together, and it was an hour and 15 minutes, a couple days a week. But that little thing of like, hey, here's a point to engage that isn't just a church service. And I was looking at chat and reading it and talking with them was so powerful and really enjoyable for me as well. It was probably one of my favorite parts of that season of life, the pandemic, outside of like all of life shutting down and me just being able to, play video games by myself in my house. Like those live streams were really, really life-giving to me. And we saw lives really changed. It was really interesting because I saw a handful of people who said during those live streams, I would have never gotten a chance to get to know our pastors if it wasn't for the pandemic. Like this is the closest I've ever felt to our pastors was a time when they literally were not allowed to come to church, which was a really interesting thing. And what's even more interesting is one of them moved from Pennsylvania to Tennessee, who is in my stream every week. And that is Faye Purple Bear, who is in our church every single week, right? She left and she just couldn't continue to be involved. They shut down my live streams. We weren't doing them anymore once we were back to church. And she came to Lux and she's in every one of my live streams for Twitch personally. She's on every church service. She's the one welcoming people in, right? She's not a Discord user, but if we're live, let me tell you, Faye's there. Faye is there. She's listening in. She's supporting. She's being encouraged. She needs prayer. She's asking for prayer, those sorts of things. And so, to a certain extent, like Faye didn't have to change churches whenever she moved. And I think that was a really powerful thing for her. She stayed connected to her community and actually feels more connected to me than she did for probably the 5 or 6 years that she attended my church when I was on staff there. And she lives states away and hasn't seen me in person or even on a video call in 3 years.
Dang. As you're sitting here thinking, I guess I'm coming at this from. So you're a pro streamer. We've established this. You're a super pro streamer. You look at your setup. You got the light behind you. You got the microphone. You got the whole thing. Oh my gosh! That's a little inside joke. But the typical digital pastor, or even the typical sort of IT guy or church tech guy, is going to be sitting here thinking like, yeah, it's good for you. Like, you play video games, you know how to stream on Twitch, you actually do that stuff. But, like, how would me, just regular, average dude or lady that is trying to do online church, like, how would I do things? So do you have any tips or tricks or anything that you have gleaned from your years of digital church that you could kind of bestow upon people?
Oh, man, I think that... So my tip and trick would honestly be go to Twitch and learn. Like, the church desperately needs Twitch because the church is asking this question: how do I drive engagement? How do I get people to engage? How do I interact with people online? And there are hundreds of millions of people doing that on Twitch. And and the church just I don't understand it. Like it's like this common question inside a church right now. Like, how do we drive engagement? It's like, but we don't want to go and learn from the one place that it's happening and happening really, really, really well. I think even if you would talk to Jeff Reed from the Church Digital, I think if you would talk to him, I think he would say that his ability to engage in live streams and do podcasting and stuff was improved to a certain extent by some of the time that he spent on Twitch watching how people actually engaged. But I mean, all that I did on Facebook was what I saw other people doing on Twitch, right? I just got on there and I talked and I welcomed people in and I recognized people and I said hello and I asked if I could pray for people. And yeah, sometimes it's a little frustrating, like you don't get people right away or whatever. But you're not just like hitting go live on Twitch for the first time like a lot of streamers are, right? If you're leading a church and you're listening to this, and you already have like, you know, several hundred, 600-700 people in your Facebook account, and you tell everyone we're going to be going live on X day each month or X day each week, like people will show up and you'll be able to engage with them and talk with them and say hello to them. You know, I do it on Instagram for like 15-20 minutes every week. It's not a long engagement, but it touches the lives of a handful of people who only engage with us there.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I have a lot of advice in terms of like, what do you do? Like, make sure that you have a decent microphone. You don't need a really expensive microphone, but like, don't flip open your MacBook Air and just click go live with your webcam and your built-in mic in your webcam and expect people to have a remotely good experience. Like, do a little research. Like, invest in this the same way that you would invest in another ministry at your church. Like, this is a chance for people to really engage. Like, you have to invest in. I think everyone wants everything on the internet to be free for some reason. I think it's because social media is free that everyone just expects everything else that you do on the internet to cost you nothing. And I'm not trying to harp on anybody, you know, especially not the church that I love. But during the pandemic, I remember coming and asking, you know, we were seeing all of this engagement through my live streams. I remember asking for a few $100s for some lights to improve what we were doing because I was using some $25 lights I bought on Amazon. And we said no. Weren't going to do it, didn't have the money for it. And then we approved, I think, like, I don't know, $15,000 or $16,000 or $17,000 upgrade to our studio in the building that no one was coming to. And, you know, it's laughable and it seemed a little ridiculous, but it did help me to realize, like, okay, not everyone is seeing what I'm seeing. Right? Not everyone is seeing the value in what I'm doing. And so if you're in a situation and you're like, man, I'm not sure that the people around me see the value, like, we get that. Like, I understand it, but encourage them to make a small investment in it, you know? Even if it's just for things like this, like calls or podcasts or whatever. Like, I was on with a guy who is like building a digital discipleship tool. He's in like a startup company. And man, like halfway through the call, his computer overheated and shut down on us. And I was just like, I messaged him and I gave him a link for like a $300 microcomputer, a monitor, a mouse, a keyboard, a good webcam, and a half decent USB mic. And it was like 800 bills. It was like $800 out the door, less than $1,000. I was like, you can't expect your, like, you know, churches who do everything with excellence just do things so stellar in person, right? Just incredible. And then they flip open a laptop webcam and go live with it, and it looks like crap. You're wondering why people don't come and engage. Well, they're used to a level of professionalism and quality in what you're doing. Yeah. And so, like, respect the space enough to invest in it. And it's not even hard. It's not even expensive. Like I said, under $1,000. And you can have a really nice setup. You can spend way more than that, but for under $1,000, you can have a really nice setup in your home office. I think that every church who has pastors who are doing things online in any capacity, like, that should just be a minimum. That should, like, come with being hired. Like, there's a $800 budget, and here's your webcam, here's your mic, here's your PC, like, here's the things that you need. Go put it in your house somewhere and set up a decent backdrop. It should just be standard because we're all going to be doing hybrid ministry from now on.
Wise words there from one Mark Lutz. The only thing that I would add on top of that is, I would echo the go to Twitch and learn thing, but I would actually also deprogram yourself a little bit from normal brick and mortar church engagement. And what I mean by that is you need to learn how to communicate through a glass eyeball that's looking at you. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're going to connect with people, you need to learn how to look at a camera and understand that you might not always be able to see them. You might not be able to feed off of their body language and their emotions, and you can hear them, and that's different from reading chat. Chat is a whole different world that I think you have to learn how to engage with chat. You got to learn the culture, the chat culture you're in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're listening to somebody or when you're trying to converse with somebody, you need to learn how to maintain pseudo eye contact with them. So like I can see Mark right now, but I have invested in a decent teleprompter. I've got a screen there. I've got a teleprompter here, so I can look and I can see like an entire thing that's going on here. But when I don't have the teleprompter set up, I'm still going to look at my camera, and that's going to simulate eye contact for that person on the other side, so that Mark, when he's looking at his computer monitor, which I'm assuming he's doing right now, he's looking at me, and he's saying, "Oh man, Andy's talking to me." You as the pastor, you as the church leader, need to understand that you cannot look at yourself in the stupid screen. One of the things that drives me nuts when people are shooting selfie video is that they'll take their camera and, so they've got their phone, and instead of looking at the camera that's up top, they're going to look at their eyes. And like, man, you have already broken me. Like, these are just simple little tips to maintain. And I know this is like, oh my gosh, we're giving like streaming tips. Like, no, this is thinking beyond your Sunday morning. Because the Sunday morning, it's a known fact. Like, yeah, I'm going to stare at the camera. Like, if I'm going to engage with my congregation, I'm going to stare at the camera, man. That's where everybody is. But like, why do we all of a sudden forget that when we're on an actual call with an actual human being? Like, that's preposterous. So break yourself of the habit of the brick and mortar communication, and you're going to go far in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that you can learn and skill set that you'll develop, but like really, like go to Twitch where it's being done professionally and learn from them. Watch what they do. See how someone engages with chat. See how they chat with people. See how they, what comments they choose to pick out. Like, and I'm sure Andy could, put a couple of links to people if we really wanted to in the chat, or in the description of this episode. But go check out a couple of people and see how they really engage, because it makes a difference. Like learning how to actually engage with people online makes a difference. And yeah, looking for those opportunities of like, even if it's like, hey, this is what we're doing in the brick and mortar. How does that translate? Where can that translate? What tools do we need to translate that into digital space?
Yep.
I really, that's all. When we structured Lux initially, we do some things differently now. When we structured Lux initially, I just sort of took like all the stuff that I knew how to do and just figured out the best way to translate it over into digital space. I think honestly, if most pastors just took time to think about it, I think most just get frustrated, don't want to think about it. I think if you actually just took time to think about it, you would find really creative ways to take what you're doing in person and implement them digitally in ways that don't seem heretical or like, are unorthodox or outside the box. We're just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like we could do it that way. We just don't think about it. Like we got to begin training our brains. And I think every pastor's going to have to do that. I think every church is going to have to do this in the future. Right. And I would say even in some cases, like the future is now, right? Because of COVID. But like, you got to start training your brain. Like if you think of how we're going to do this in the physical space, you should also simultaneously be thinking through how we're going to do this in digital space. Like those things should be two wavelengths of thought. They should happen at the same time. That you're thinking always, how are we doing this in both spaces, right? Hybrid thinking when it comes to your church, especially if you're a church planter. You better be thinking hybrid thinking from day one.